All right, everybody. Steve Kwan here for Fighting Matters. I got some friends. I got Mike Mahaffey from Old Bastard Jiu-Jitsu. Mike, how's it going, my friend?
Doing great. How are you, Steve?
I am doing great as well. We got Jesse Walker from Rough Hands BJJ. Jesse, how's it going?
What's up, everybody? It's great. Glad to be here.
How are you feeling after your recent induction into the WWE Hall of Fame, by the way?
Was that me?
Apparently.
Oh, man.
I guess we should explain. Triple H was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, I think, yesterday. And Jesse points out that many people have said he strongly resembles Triple H. I don't know about that. I'm not sure that I see it. I think that might just be some overgeneralization. Just because you're bald and you have a beard doesn't mean that you look like Triple H, right? I mean, I think that's maybe a bit Yeah. We all have our own identities. And for a first-timer here, we've got Shelby York, also from Rough Hands BJJ. Shelby, how is it going?
Good. How are you?
I am doing good. Now, we're here because actually we had a very Shelby-related topic. But first, before we get into that, Shelby, say hi. Tell everyone about yourself.
Oh, I'm still Shelby.
This is my favorite interview question because it just trips people up right out of the gate.
It's like tell me a fun fact about yourself, which is truly the absolute worst small
We're
talk
going to do
question
trust
that
falls
exists.
next.
Great. That's really great. Yeah,
Well,
I'm
tell
the
us
other
about
half
yourself.
of Rough Hands. I'm the other half of Rough Hands. That's
That's it.
Which
That's
of
all
the
you
rough
got
hands
for
are
us?
you? Is Jesse the left rough hand or the right rough hand?
Oh, Jesse's definitely the left. He is the Ida of our Ida and Pingla for sure.
Got
What the hell does that mean?
The feminine and the masculine body were like role reverses.
Wow. I think she just called me girly, which is
I didn't
probably
call
better
it
than.
girly.
Well, I feel like that may be better than what the people on YouTube call us. So I'll take it and we'll move on.
Well, what we wanted to talk about here today is some stuff that you'd been posting recently. Of course, you've been kind of part of our circle here, and you put a lot of provocative social media posts talking about your experience as a martial arts instructor, especially as a woman. This is something that on BJJ Mental Models I'm very passionate about exposing and bringing light to, because I think in a male-dominated sport, a lot of guys will kind of assume what the female experience is in the sport, and maybe they've got some ideas that they've kind of come up with themselves, but a lot of the time they're wrong or incomplete, or they don't actually quite understand the severity of what it's like to be a woman in a sport where you're outnumbered like 7-1 with guys. So Shelby, I'll turn it over to you. Why don't you kind of tell us a little bit about what you've been sharing recently and where that comes from?
It predominantly has stemmed from, there is a private social media group called the Women's Grappling Network, and it is where women post anything from selling gis that they don't wear anymore to like, how do you do your hair so that your hair doesn't get ripped out, to more comp-based stuff or issues with coaches. Or we also have a lot of instructors and coaches in there that will go to the group and present an issue or a problem and be like, what would you all do? What should I do? And there was a post a few days before I started what I call screaming into the internet void, where a woman posted, she posted a screenshot of a video she had posted of herself. And it was a jiu-jitsu based video, like an active video, like a reel. And she had on compression shorts and a sports bra, like the same as a man wearing compression shorts and like no shirt. And a coach from a school in Florida commented on it and was essentially slut shaming her. Like, rather than like talking about her jujitsu or criticizing her anyway, he was talking about her body and like using things like meat flaps and essentially like vagina in the face, like just the immature, gross, like douchebag conversation. So she posted this in there and was like, hey, just so you guys know, this is a thing that was said, and just for women to be aware, like this is a high level coach at a school in Florida. And weirdly enough, there are women who train at his gym that then started defending him, that were more like, well, I know him and he's a great guy and he's so wonderful with us. And then it became this weird battle between the women where some are like, this is why this gets to keep happening. It's the little microaggressions of like, well, he didn't mean it like that. Or it was on the internet and, you know, people take things not as seriously there. And we're like, no, actually, that's super not okay. And if he's doing that on the internet with someone he doesn't know, what kind of weird shit's happening in the gym? And it's something I talk about at our gym a lot where like we joke, like I'm one of the filthiest people in our gym. But like the joke's only funny if everyone's in on the joke. Like you're bashing her on the internet when she's just trying to make content rather than either being supportive or just shut the fuck up and keep scrolling. And if you had said that shit at my gym, I would have knocked your teeth into your throat. And I was like, you know what? Like we need to essentially just start, I can't think of a better word than like publicly socially executing these coaches and instructors that are gross to the women in their gyms and let people be gross to the women in their gyms and think they can do and say whatever they want because they've gotten away with it this long. So why would they stop? And I don't like that.
Well said. I got to ask. I mean, I'm always curious to know. And of course, tell us a bit about your martial arts background, because my understanding is that most of your martial arts are different from myself, for example. Really, I'm just exclusively Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I know that Mike and I believe Jesse, you guys have cross-trained a lot. But what is your background in the martial arts?
Predominantly Krav Maga. That is my heart center. It's where most of my passion lives. The Jiu-Jitsu stuff, I like as well. I enjoy teaching significantly more than training. Teaching is my preference. And I've been in a constant state of surgery recovery since 2022. So I have been completely stagnant in my jiu-jitsu career. And my goal, I'd like to get my black belt in Krav Maga. I'm much more interested in getting that than progressing in the Brazilian jiu-jitsu, but you know, kind of both go hand in hand. But it is the Krav Maga world is just as disgusting as the jiu-jitsu world when it comes to how women are treated, just generally speaking.
Okay, that was the next thing I wanted to ask you, actually, because as someone who really only does jiu-jitsu, I myself have kind of been shocked by the level of grossness in this sport. And I've been under the impression that although it's, you know, jiu-jitsu definitely has this problem, it's actually really a problem with pretty much all of the martial arts. I've been kind of led to that impression. And it sounds like you've kind of been through this yourself too. I am guessing that probably you've experienced this kind of treatment in real life and not just kind of through seeing other people, right? Because every woman I know who's trained in martial art has a story, right? And in varying levels of escalation. Some people have absolutely awful horror stories, some people less so, but every woman I've ever met who can give you just a whole bunch of examples of like weird, creepy interactions they've had in the sport. I'm guessing probably you're no different.
Yeah, and it's far beyond just sexual, like sexual jokes, getting hit on. Like that is just one slice of the pizza that is the treatment of women in this industry. There's a lot of microaggression, there's a lot of belittling, there's a lot of gaslighting. Like I literally in my very first Krav Maga instructor training was pulled in front of my entire training group and told like eyeballs to eyeballs, like you're never gonna run a room because no one's ever gonna take a 5 foot tall female seriously as an instructor and be willing to learn from you. And I was like, that's really interesting. Thank you for that feedback. Like, what? And
That
I
is
had
first.
already, I'd already had, my yoga stuff going on. Rough Hands was originally just a yoga studio. And I had already been teaching yoga and meditation classes at the juvenile detention centers in my area for like over a year. And I was like, well, I can control inmates and make them stretch and meditate. I think I can teach a grown man how to throw a punch.
Yeah, yeah. This is actually a really interesting slant on this conversation that I think is worth digging into. So, from the male perspective, I think that men are kind of increasingly aware that look, jujitsu does have and martial arts do have this misogyny problem. There is way more like sexual abuse in jujitsu than is acceptable by any stretch. And I think for a lot of guys, they think that that's kind of the beginning and the end of the conversation. But what I've learned and what you're kind of touching on is it goes much beyond that, right? It's not just the criminal stories that we hear about, but it's also just ongoing choice of language and dehumanization, and just kind of constantly making you feel like you don't really quite belong there. And that's not always a big thing. It's often just an accumulation of little things and just the way that you're treated over time. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that and what that kind of how that leads to a woman's experience in martial arts like Jiu-Jitsu or Krav Maga.
So I think there seems to be these two directions things move. We're either in this toolbox douchebag place where the guys are doing their thing and the women are just there, almost decorative. And they're like, yeah, we can say we have women training at our gym because there's 3 of them and they're all white belts and they're here for a few months and then they leave because they don't like how they're being treated. And then there's like the other end of the spectrum that is so rigid that nobody can make a joke. And it's almost like clinical, like hospital sterile. And there's not an in between. Like women also like oil check jokes. And they also enjoy, like Jesse loves to tell everybody about my duffler creation at the expense of my well-being. Like women can be just as funny and one of the guys as any of the dudes in your gym if you give them an opportunity to feel safe enough to be that. And you do that by not letting dudes try to fuck them and not letting them treat it as a dating pool. And it's obviously not easy to do. And for a lot of gyms, it'll be a complete culture shift, but it's really simple. It's like,
I have to ask, what is a duffler?
You haven't told them?
Can I tell the story? So Shelby and I, sometimes at night we're both just on our phones. Just what is it called? Parallel play? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
So we're on our phones and just kind of out of nowhere, she goes, "Hey, what is it called when you fart in the bed and then put the covers over your partner's head?"
Called
and
a Mahaffey.
It's I'm like, I think most people call it a Dutch oven. And then she goes, the duffler. And I knew exactly what she meant because she's talking about the muffler. And I'm like, are you kidding me right now? And so that was the invention of the dufflers, farting in your hand and then hitting somebody with the muffler.
Oh my God.
Oh,
I know. I know.
We have t-shirts for sale, duffler t-shirts. So
do you?
We'll put a link to those in the show notes.
I have to cross-check this, but I don't think that's illegal under some rule sets. I think you could probably get away with it.
I think you probably could.
Jeez.
Mahaffey,
okay.
This may be your edge that you needed.
Holy shit. I was going to say, the people at Magic are going to hate that I heard this.
I also hate that I heard it. I hate that I said it. I can't take it back. Too many people know about it now.
You're like
it's
that guy
on the internet.
You're like who is it? Nobel, the guy the Nobel Prize is named after, and he regretted all of the terrible creations that he made, and it's like you've unleashed something terrible upon the world. But I like that you bring this up, right? Because often guys have a kind of a weird conception of what to do when there's women in the gym. It's actually kind of sort of like hilariously inept. If you check out like RBJJ, right, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu subreddit, not that I recommend anyone do that, but if you do ever go there, yeah, you'll see that like 1 out of every 10 posts is some guy asking about like, how do you roll with women? What do you do with them? And it's just such a hilarious question, right? Like they act like women are like unicorns or leprechauns, like some magical creature has wandered into the room, and it's like I don't know the ritual to deal with this thing, right? And I think that a lot of the time, honestly, guys just overthink it, right? I mean, if this were a 110-pound dude, right, how would you roll with them? Okay, do basically that, right? And I mean, yes, there are some differences here and there, right? And there are certain considerations that you need to be aware of. But a lot of that either can be just observed with common sense, or, God forbid, you can actually just talk to the other person and get on the same page about how you can make this role productive. I've said many times in jiu-jitsu that if, when you want to roll with someone, one of the most important things to do is have that initial conversation about what are we doing here? Like what is the purpose of this role? Are we just having fun? Are we goofing off? Are we working on a particular skill? Is this a competition round? Do you have any injuries that I need to know about so I don't send you back to the hospital? You just kind of have a conversation in advance to figure out how can we make this a good, productive experience for both people. And if you ever wind up in a situation with someone, like, a woman, for example, and you're not sure how to make it a good role, you can always just ask and have a conversation and say, like, what do you want to do? What are the goals for the role? Here's what I want to work on. What do you want to work on? Any injuries, any do's and don'ts? It's pretty easy to actually get on the same page with people about what's acceptable if you open your mouth and ask. And I find that is something that kind of is a bit hilarious about a lot of the guys in jiu-jitsu. They get totally flummoxed about how to deal with women, like it's some mystery that they have to solve. Like, how do I roll with a woman? How can that possibly work? I'm guessing you probably have a lot of similar stories like that.
Yeah. Like, and like, I'm a person. You roll with me like you would another person because we're people. Like, it's like you're the one making it about tits right now. Like, it doesn't have to be at all.
I'm glad you brought that up. Let me ask you about that, because from my perspective, when you are able to keep sexualization out of the room, it's just anatomy, right? I've had students accidentally grab my genitals before. I've accidentally touched accidentally, we're grappling, right? Shit, everything's touching everything. But if there's not that kind of weird sex energy behind it, it's never felt like an issue for me. How do you feel kind of on those lines?
I think, just from observation, like I've been doing this for a decade now, a lot of men specifically don't understand the difference of intimacy and vulnerability and sex. Like, yes, this is a very intimate sport. Like, you are literally smashing your body into another person's bodies. You're going to touch boobs, you're going to touch a vagina, you're going to touch balls. Like, you're literally horizontal tangoing in your pajamas. That is very intimate. That is a willingness to be very vulnerable with another human being. Those are very possible to exist in with there being zero sex energy. And that is where I personally feel like one of the gaps are.
And that's actually, sorry, Mike. I'll turn it over to you in a second, but I just wanted to ask one more question, if that's okay. That's actually a really interesting observation, because I think a lot of guys, especially in today's society, and I think everyone would agree, men are not really taught how to be open and vulnerable, and they're not really properly equipped for a lot of the social interactions that you may encounter in life. And so for many guys, when you put them into especially a combat sport like jiu-jitsu, which is, close range, even by the standards of most combat sports, when you put guys into that perspective, a lot of the time they only have one or two previous contexts that they can fall on, and they don't really know how to handle this new situation. Now, the funny thing is, if you ever spar with like a really elite female black belt or brown belt, you don't have this problem, because you're always about a split second away from getting your arm ripped off. So you kind of have to focus on that. But where this happens, because of the gender imbalance, I find that often you get the situation where, there's like a whole bunch of guys in the room, and then there's like two girls, like you said, Shelby. And the end result is, because not only is there this gender gap, there's also this massive experience gap, because the guys have been entrenched in the sport for so much longer that usually it's not just that they're bigger, it's also that they have like 10 years more experience or whatever than women who are starting off. And then, of course, if they creep out the women, or if the women otherwise have a bad experience, they're going to leave. So they're never going to make it to that 10-year black belt milestone. And so the end result is, for a lot of guys, they don't have the same kind of relationship with a lot of women in the gym as they do with other guys, because often it's not even the gender gap, but just due to the fact that the sport is so much more male dominated, they're used to having these like crazy aggressive roles with people. And then suddenly all of these different lenses through which they view the world kind of merge and blend together, and they don't know how to deal with it. And I found that has been an interesting thing to watch, is just how kind of men interact with women in the gym, because you can tell a lot of them are taken so far out of their comfort zone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will deliberately, it sounds judgmental, but when certain stereotypically displaying men come in, I will deliberately say perverted shit and make jokes with the women in the room so he knows, like, this is how we do things here and they are equal. And that is how this game is going to be played at Rough Hands. And majority of the time, they're like, oh shit, okay, this is okay, I can do this because she said it was okay now to do this. But it is tricky. And I do have to have really shitty conversations sometimes. I had to have a conversation like 2 months ago with one of our male students because he was not being malicious in any way, but he was like telling some of the women, like, your hair smells really good. Your eyes are really pretty. Just like weird. It was him attempting friendship, but it creeped out some of the girls. Tried to talk to him about it. And he was very receptive to it. It actually went really well. And he was able to kind of navigate a way to interact with the women at the gym in a way that was authentic for him while also respecting their boundaries. But it's not like that with everybody, and that's okay. That's why there's a million jiu-jitsu gyms, because you're not going to be everybody's vibe, and that's okay.
So he was saying the same kind of things I say to Jesse when I roll with Jesse.
Yeah, but Jesse likes it.
Okay, yeah, fair. Totally fair. So, I mean, yeah, I was going to ask a second ago, like, Shelby, how do you, I think you just answered my question in some ways, like, how would you handle that then as a coach, like deflating that sexual tension if you see it?
It depends. It just depends on who's in the equation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I will tell you, because I was involved in that scenario and I probably did not handle it well. Because I was hot out of the gate and immediately was like, if I hear another fucking word from a woman about some weird shit you said, you're fucking out of here, blah, 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 which is not a terrible thing
You
to say.
dufflered this guy, didn't you?
I
You can tell
dufflered
this is a safe space. You can admit it.
He had
It's
Taco
not a
Bell
federal
for
crime.
dinner and Cracker Barrel for breakfast, and
I
then
can
they
smell
rolled
it
at
through
lunch.
the internet.
And you know, I know not every gym can do it, but this is, I feel like, one of the benefits of having a couple, a truly equal couple running a gym, is we can kind of counterpoint each other and support and correct each other, you know, whatever, in trying to navigate some of these issues. Because I tell you, we have been through some real thickets before. But we've worked through it, you know, as a team, and I feel like we've come out the other side a lot better.
And having a willingness to have really uncomfortable conversations with people. I do think that's another reason why we're, and it sounds like a holier than thou, and I don't mean it that way, but I do think it's one of the reasons our gym runs the way that it does. And we have a 50-50 gender split because we have very firm boundaries. You don't shit where you eat. We don't make our teammates uncomfortable. This is not a sucking and fucking and loving gym. You're here to grapple. This is not your dating pool.
I want to expand on this a little bit here, because something that, again, and we talked about this earlier, when men hear about awful experiences that women have in the martial arts, right? What they normally think this means is like some sort of sexual abuse situation, but it can also be a lot more subtle than that. Sometimes it's not something that is that on the nose. Sometimes it is dehumanizing language, like you said. You mentioned gaslighting earlier, which is a word that gets used so much nowadays that people can sometimes kind of, it can almost lose its meaning because we get so used to hearing it.
Yes.
But I think maybe it might be worth expanding on that, because I've seen this happen to women, and it might be an idea to kind of explain to like the dudes out there, what is that actually like? How does that look? What does that mean? And why is it bad? Like, how would you get gaslit at the gym, and what will wind up happening in that case?
So I'll give you an example. So I teach Krav a lot, and whenever I do a women's only seminar, I start the seminars with saying, there are going to be times when I'm talking to you all and the language I'll be using is going to sound very gaslighty or victim blamey. And I don't mean it that way. Some of you will perceive it that way and get angry at me. That's fine. We'll digest it after that. And in that context, it's whenever, like, say we're drilling like strangulation against the wall, like somebody's choking you and has you against the wall. I'm going to say things like, you missed a lot of things to get to this spot. Like, you missed a lot of signs. You were napping and they got you. That's very victim blamey. Like, fucking somebody's choking you up against a wall. Like, how is that possibly your fault? But it's separating the fighting aspect of it from the emotional and mental side of it. And it's similar, but not from a coaching perspective. Trying to make it make sense to you all, like it makes sense in my head.
I get it. I've been in the, I mean, and Jesse and I have talked, like I've done martial arts for decades and delved a lot into self-defense and the difference between martial arts, sport, and self-defense. So anyway, my long-winded point is I hear where you're coming from. Like I can understand your example.
Yeah, I mean, and there's some stuff like with the JIT stuff, like you're just not going to be able to do it. Like it just is what it is. Like size matters, anatomy matters, speed matters. Like there are some
Attributes
things.
matter.
Yeah, like it's just it is what it is, and that sucks. And
It's
the
a
reason
tricky
there's weight
one.
classes in competitions.
yeah,
It's a tricky one too, because I mean, and we've talked about this on my podcast many times. Attributes do matter, right? That doesn't mean that you can't be effective if you're smaller, but it does mean that the way that you do jujitsu could look significantly different from someone who outweighs you by 100 pounds, because there's some things that just aren't feasible if you're smaller. The flip side is there's some things that are only feasible if you're smaller. And that's okay, but you have to be honest and know what those things are. And, you know, on the topic of gaslighting, there's a lot of jiu-jitsu coaches who simply, and this is good, well-intentioned, but they simply will not admit that attributes matter. They'll just say, oh, well, you know, if you just keep training or practicing this, you'll get it eventually. It's a technique problem, which is not the case. There's a lot of techniques where the leverage points really only work against someone the same size as you, or maybe even smaller. A lot of techniques in jiu-jitsu, and I mean, Jesse, Mike, we could sit down and talk for hours about exactly which ones those are. They fall apart given a big enough size difference. And I feel sometimes like in a lot of martial arts, people feel a need to protect the marketing because, you know, it doesn't sound good in jiu-jitsu to admit that some of the stuff doesn't work, right? People don't want to admit that. And so they will sometimes just put people under the impression, oh, no, you're just not doing it right. You're just not doing it right. And at some point, I think we got to have a conversation that, hey, look, technique changes when there is a 100+ pound weight disadvantage or difference between you or your opponent. It's not even just about who's stronger. Some things are just physically easier or harder if there's a big size difference, right? You would want to change your strategy depending on the size of your opponent. And that's kind of like a very subtle form of gaslighting that I think a lot of women get where, you know, especially when they start off, if they're paired with people much bigger, they might struggle to make things happen right away, and their instructor will just kind of sort of gaslight them a bit and say, oh, no, you'll be able to triangle that 250-pound dude. It's totally possible. Just give it a little bit more practice.
You're full of shit. You're
Yeah,
full of shit.
Well,
and it's unfortunate too, because, sorry, go on, Jesse.
Let me give another example too, and it's from the Krav Maga world, and I think this is maybe me, not quite an admission of gaslighting, but my journey of understanding and being able to hear the other side. And, you know, we teach in our self-defense stuff this kind of body of techniques around this posture called the fence. Mike, you saw me teach it last week, right? And for a long time, I taught it one way. And it was about how we speak to the person that's in front of us. And I had this young woman that trained with us for years. And she challenged me every time I taught this. She says, this doesn't work for women. This doesn't work for women. and I couldn't hear it in the way that she meant it. And it took years, and to my, and it was my bad. I was trying my best. But what I finally realized was it wasn't so much the technique that was the problem. It was the human interaction that was happening during the technique. And that the way I was describing it was how two men would talk to one another in a stereotypical way. But if again, this is, I don't want to really get into the whole gender thing and all the stereotypes, but if we can just speak broadly about it, if a woman is faced with a potential male aggressor, the verbalization, the conversation that happens there is going to be very different than what happens between two men. And I finally heard her, and I finally understood what she was trying to tell me, and it adjusted. And Mike, you probably remember me talking about that last week. But that was a journey for me. So, when people are listening and watching this, hearing what Shelby's saying, this is not always just a light switch that you can flip on and off. We have to train ourselves, and we have to be open to continuing to hear this stuff to make the changes that need to happen.
I mean, even things like you're going to teach a women's seminar and you're talking about having somebody in your guard, you also have to take into consideration that they might be inside of you. And that is a whole other layer and conversation when we're talking about the sexual assault side of things. But that's real, and that is a thing we have to accommodate and prepare for, rather than just in your jammies wrestling. It's very different. Sorry, Mike.
No, I'm sorry. I'm only wanting to support what you're saying. Like, I remember when I first tried jiu-jitsu in like 1994, I was still teaching karate at MSU, and I was super excited. And I remember, after a couple months of jiu-jitsu, running a karate class and wanting to show some of the folks, what we did. And like my 23-year-old self, 22-year-old self didn't understand like why the young female college students in our club were not super comfortable doing some of the stuff that I was trying to show. Right. And like, I just didn't, and kind of what you said, Jesse, earlier, like I didn't get it. I was like, what? This is fighting. This is wrestling. This is, jiu-jitsu, blah, blah, blah. And the positions made a lot of them uncomfortable, and I just didn't get it. And so there are things that I had to learn as a coach coming up. So anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Shelby. Like,
No. Remember,
I do have to point out, it's pretty funny that I think it's pretty funny that, the whole point of this podcast is we want to give Shelby a platform because there aren't enough women in the sport, but we're like outnumbering her 3-1 here in this podcast. So dear listener, I am well aware that there's an imbalance here, but we just wanted to get Shelby on. We don't want perfect to be the enemy of the good. There will be a lot more women on here in the future, but yes, we're aware of the hilarity.
And we all wanted to talk to her, and we all had questions we wanted to ask her too.
Yes.
I mean, that was part of the drive to this.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. You are our guru here, Shelby.
Ooh, no pressure.
Nope,
how
not
does
at
that
all.
feel? Yeah, well, I think that's worth bringing up because, I mean, I've done podcasts kind of like this before, and the feedback that often comes up is, even on podcasts like this, it's easy for women to get drowned out just because it's a game of numbers, right? There's so many men in this sport. There are so few women. And so especially when you have a sensitive conversation like this, really the objective should be to give women the floor. And so in this case, we're just trying to get the ball rolling. We will probably have more women-led conversations in the future. So I am aware of that problem before we get hate mail. I just wanted to bring that up.
Whatever.
Sorry.
There'll be hate mail no matter what. I'm sure there will be lots of opinions about my thoughts
Everything
as well.
that gets said. Yeah.
I'll send you some good hate mail. We get some good ones. Yeah. Something I want.
Go ahead.
Sorry,
go ahead. No. Please go ahead.
Something that I wanted to actually queue up for you. I wanted to ask you. You were talking about some of the things that guys might not realize when they're teaching women, especially self-defense. And I realized this a while ago. This was kind of brought to my attention. If you leave it to men to set up a women's self-defense program, they're going to kind of structure it around how do you stop the random masked aggressor who attacks you in a dark alley? Like, how do you do a flying armbar or whatever to beat up this stranger and save your life? And something that women have brought to my attention is that's kind of a bit of a male fantasy, because a lot of the time, if not perhaps most of the time, the aggressor is going to be a trusted person that the woman cares about. It's not going to be some rando in the dark alley. And if it's your uncle or your cousin or your brother or your best friend, are you still going to be in a psychological state where you can snap on an armbar and break this person's arm? I'm probably not, right? The sense of betrayal is so overwhelming, and I'd love to get your thoughts on that. If that's kind of a blind spot that men have when they set up women's training programs.
Yes. Majority of the time, you know your attacker, you know the person that's assaulting you. The stats currently are 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men will be assaulted, which is, even for men, like, that is a lot. We actually, the last women's seminar I did a few weeks ago, we spent a portion of it talking about microabuse and microaggression and what that looks like. And multiple of the women shared their stories of sexual assault and being molested and being raped, and like the reflecting on things that they experienced with those people, that they were like, oh, it was different versions of like grooming, microaggression, signs that you miss because it's a person that you trust. And you're not looking for that with someone that you trust. So that is definitely a disconnect with male coaches and male instructors. I mean, and sexual assault at all with men is like very taboo. You don't talk about it. One of the women in my last seminar, her sons had been molested, and it was her stepdad, and her mother did not want it to be reported. And her sons are adults now and still struggle with that having happened, because it's like the opposite of female identity, where you're like, oh, now you're no longer masculine, you're no longer a man because you were inappropriately touched and you're impure now. There's no amount of steroids that will make you a man again.
They will make you better at jiu-jitsu, though.
The steroids.
They'll make
Yeah.
you better at everything.
The steroids,
Painting,
not the molestation.
Just
They might
Just
might
ask-
kill you by the time you turn 40, but you'll have some glorious jujitsu before then, I presume.
you will look damn good in your casket.
You know, I think something else that's worth mentioning, though, is, you know, we have to remember that we all are products of the same culture and community. And Shelby and I have taught a number of these things together over the years, and I don't feel like it is just a blind spot for the men. You know, that's something that we have to talk to the women a lot about too, is that, you know, they come in with these boogeyman fantasies of like, what do I do if there's a person hiding under my car with a knife that cuts my Achilles? You know, they have all these crazy schemes in their head of things that are going to happen to them, and having to sit down and be like, most of that's not real. You know, most of the time it is going to be somebody that you know. I feel like that is a blind spot for a lot of folks, and that we just have really failed at, you know, communicating that out as an industry.
I give every group, like we do it to colleges and high schools, and even in my adult women's, I give a fuck politeness speech. And fuck politeness is like one of my go-to phrases. And I generally start the seminars with, every time you let a man make you uncomfortable and don't say anything about it, that's you telling yourself and him that his comfortability is more important than yours. And that's the first level of that weird microaggression, gender bender unevenness. Like, it is completely okay to ruffle the feathers and address the elephant in the room and be like, hey, the way you're talking or whatever you're doing is making me uncomfortable. Let's change it. It doesn't have to be crazy and emotional and wild unless you want it to be, but it can also just be a conversation. And if a man is not receptive to that, then fuck off. Like, my feelings are just as important and I should feel comfortable in this interaction just like you are. We both have equal rights to comfortability in this interaction.
I want to ask you about what you just said about male receptivity there, because you're right. I think a lot of the time women will just let it roll when a guy says something wildly inappropriate because they expect that he will push back and get angry, and they don't want that kind of conflict. And I mean, I understand it, right? If you are a guy and you say something that is crude or rude or sexist, and maybe you didn't realize it, like no one wants to be told that, hey, that's a shitty thing to say, right? A lot of people will get their hackles up because of that right away. And I get this vibe a lot from guys in the community when I have this kind of conversation like we're having here. You know, men will often say things like, well, you're generalizing, you're telling these stories about terrible things to guys. I'm not like that. None of my friends are like that. So, and maybe that's true, but at the end of the day, when you act that way, you're suppressing conversation and you're suppressing the opportunity for growth. You're suppressing the opportunity to make people in the room feel more welcome. But I'd love to know your thoughts on that, because I am guessing that sometimes when you have those blunt conversations, you get equally blunt pushback, and sometimes they get mad, I would assume.
Totally. Yeah. And I'm like, guess what? I'm meaner. And you have to be like, you have to, specifically talking about rough hands, I am the female lead and I have to walk the walk that I'm talking, or I'm full of shit too. And I can't expect any of my female students to be emboldened enough to speak up for themselves if I'm not leading by example. I don't fucking get mad. You're just proving my point more.
By the way, sorry, Mike and Jesse, if you've got a bunch of questions there, I'm probably hogging the airtime here. I just kind of have a tendency to slip into podcaster mode. So if you guys have anything you want to chime in at, go for it.
I mean, first of all, Shelby, thanks so much for having this conversation with us. I've been really excited to do this, and having just spent 4 or 5 days at Rough Hands, I can say with 100% certainty that you lead a great gym and that your influence has been, it permeates that whole place. And it's a super positive thing. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And, you know, I've been bragging about the culture at your gym to my friends. So just so you know that I want the world to know that I think the culture at Rough Hands is awesome. Like, if you're anywhere near them and you want to train jiu-jitsu, you got to do it. You got to go there.
You know, something I noticed, I mean, I think going back to the camp, I think one of the things that I noticed and other people commented on was kind of how infectious the culture is. You know, not that we invited shitheads or, you know, that we had bad people coming in. It was a wonderful group, but it was really interesting. Somebody made the comment that it was hard to tell who were the Rough Hands people and who were the visitors. And I thought that was an amazing compliment, but also it speaks to when you're doing things right and people walk into that environment, they act right too. And I think that's an important point.
I would say that Zach was the only jerk at camp.
Oh, wow. We're going to start blasting on Zach.
I don't even know who Zach is, but I don't know who he is, but yeah, I'm happy to pile on here. I don't know him, but
oh yeah, just pile on.
He sounds like an asshole, so.
No. I know.
Oh,
God,
Zach.
what a dick. Oh, you don't, Zach is, he was a guy from Magic. He was the blue belt from Magic that showed up.
Okay.
He was my uke for some of the, and so he went down to Josh McKinney's place with me last year, and when I did the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show, and Zach sat in the studio, and Josh and I made fun of him. So it's become a thing, just making fun of Zach on podcasts. So yeah, Zach was the only jerk there, but we're used to him.
It was since we're name dropping people, this is a positive thing, not a negative thing. Are you familiar with Acid Josh, Steve?
Acid Josh?
Yeah.
Josh McCree.
Josh
No.
McCree? Okay. Well, he is the male version of me. Like, he I didn't know that another me existed, but that's him. And
Hi, Josh.
Oh, we
I'm
love
so sorry,
Josh.
Josh,
And we
blasting
love
you on the
Zach too, for the
internet.
record. Zach's amazing, for the
Um,
record. But Josh is awesome. Josh
but
McAfee is great.
interestingly enough, Josh is a super clown and says a lot of inappropriate shit, just like I do. But we also were able to have really good conversations about trauma and have like an understanding and a background in trauma study. And he has a very similar air about him and air about his teaching. So I do think there is a correlation between an understanding of trauma and how to deal with people that have trauma and how to make them feel safe in an environment where the sole purpose of being in that environment is being vulnerable and intimate with others.
And uncomfortable.
Yes, you have to feel safe to be willing to be uncomfortable. And in feeling safe, you have to know that you're not going to be hit on or groped or belittled for having tits. It's a very low bar.
What are some things that us dudes can do better? Like, what can...
Honestly, calling out behavior when you see it, when you see it happening, and it doesn't even have to be a public thing, but like, hey, like you're coming in a little hot, or even if it's like when I was really deep in training jits, I was a coach figure, I was a authority figure, and people significantly bigger than me would try to murder me just as a way of like, I don't know if it was a get coach to like you or show how good you've gotten, but I got my ass kicked a lot and I got hurt a lot. And I was like you haven't proven anything to me. You've just hurt me. Like, I know you're strong. I know you know your stuff. Fucking cool it.
Yeah, this touches on. I wish I could remember who said it, but there was someone who once told me that the purpose of their gym is to create a safe space for practicing violence, and I thought that that's a
Yeah.
really actually an insightful way to describe things, and it's right in line with what you talked about, which is we need to create a place where people feel safe being vulnerable, because you are being vulnerable. You are at constant threat of injury in jiu-jitsu. The only thing that is preventing that is the trust in your partner. If you don't have that, then you don't have a viable jiu-jitsu culture. And again, that's where a lot of these things, like just little subtle comments that are inappropriate or offensive, I mean, if you let those slide, that erodes that trust, right? And trust, I've heard people say that jiu-jitsu is all about trust at the end of the day. That's the single most important thing, right? You're
It's the only
putting
thing that
trust.
makes it work.
Yeah, yeah. That's why I think the Fight Club concept had so much traction, right? The old movie Fight Club, where I remember watching that in the '90s and thinking, like, this is unrealistic. Why would a bunch of dudes get so much value out of locking themselves in a room and beating the crap out of each other? And then I started doing that in the 2000s, and I learned, oh, there's a reason why, right? It's trust. You are putting, whether it's your intent or not, when you're training with someone, you are trusting them completely. And if you do it right, it's impossible not to grow close to these people, because that's a level of trust that you don't really give to just random people in the real world. You can make great friendships out of that because you inherently have to trust that person. If someone comes in and they're saying shitty stuff or they're hitting on you when it's inappropriate, right? That erodes that trust, not just between you and the person, but really it erodes the culture of the gym, and it needs to be protected. It's, like you said earlier, Shelby, you let it happen once and you've kind of given implicit permission. You've allowed it to normalize. And then the next time it happens, it's going to be even harder to shut it down. So you need to shut it down right away. And that, again, requires the courage to have some very uncomfortable conversations.
Right. Even this weekend, we had like 60 people in town for the middle models camp. And like, I was on my guard. So I was like, I don't know all these people. I don't know how they do things, where they came from. So I would like, be a host, be a coach, make sure you're policing so that everybody feels okay. And it can be a very tricky line to dance, but I'll dance that motherfucker because you are not messing up my sacred space.
Amen to that.
Well said.
Here.
Well, one other thing I want to ask you, Shelby, what should men know about the way that women have to survive in this sport? Is there anything else, like, especially on the topic of microaggressions, like you talked about? People understand the big things, I think, but what about the little things? Like, I'll give you an example to kind of kick this off. So a friend of mine made a really good reel the other day on Instagram. Like, it was just, she was working guard with someone. I reshared it. And there was a lot of negative pushback. First of all, a shit ton of creepy comments, but also even some guy coming in and saying, wow, this woman's terrible. What a thirst trap. She's just using this to, to kind of make things sexy and to get attention. And I looked at this reel and I'm like, these are two women doing jiu-jitsu, fully clothed, in the gi, fully covered up. There is nothing sexual about this reel, except, I guess, for the fact that they're women. So if you, and all you're telling me then, if you think that's sexual, is that you view women inherently as sexual objects and you think it's appropriate to comment on it whenever you see it, which I think we should agree is not appropriate. But I'd love to know what other things like that happen to you, because this is something I've observed. Women constantly have to balance this line of like, well, she's just doing it to be sexy, so we don't have to take her seriously. Are there any other traps that men need to know about that women have to suffer through in the sport, and what can men do to stop that from happening?
I think you hit most of the nail on the head. Also the whole, like, the Run Like a Girl campaign, where they're like, run like a girl, and then they do like the goofy run. I don't know if you've seen the videos about it, where they ask like little bitty girls to run like a girl and they're all running really fast and being athletic. But then you ask little boys and then they do like the dainty, like all the stereotypical, just treat them like people. Treat them the same way you would if it was two men rolling. Like, they're just people that happen to have a vagina. They're just if we could completely remove just the whole gender aspect of it, it would be better. But the predators will always predator. And like you said, she could have a gi on and a ski mask and somebody would find a way to say she's trying to be hot. She's trying to be sexy. Oh my God, her legs are open. Oh, her ass is in the air. Oh, I can see her cleavage. Like, yep, she has a body. That's right, she does. Like, but I do think calling it out in the gyms and stopping it as it starts is in everyone's own like personal little bubbles of gyms, like calling it out, like, hey, that's not fucking cool. She has just as much right to be here as you do, and she can probably kick your ass because you're gonna go into that thinking that you're gonna mop the floor with her, and she's gonna break your fucking head. And it's going to be beautiful. But you also have the other end of the spectrum where a man like won't even roll, like won't even drill with a woman because he's afraid he's going to hurt her.
Or the other one that I hear is he's afraid he's going to put his hand the wrong place and the woman's going to take it the wrong way and there's going to be a false sexual harassment claim. And so it's better to just cut that off and not roll with her in the first place. I hear that a lot too, where guys are so worried about like the woman making some accusation that they just decide not even to play ball, which, I mean, obviously is bullshit, but I'm sure you have a better way to explain it than I do.
But yeah, like when most women, unless they have no idea what they're walking into when they join a class, know that their body is going to be touched. Has it happened where we've had people come in and they're like, oh my God, there is so much touching. And I'm like, did you do any research before you decided to try this at all? Yes. Okay. But it's tricky. It's if you just treat a woman like a human, it'll be okay. If you touch her tit on accident, it'll be okay. 9 times out of 10, she's not going to notice. And she's going to notice because you brought it up. She's too busy trying to not get her lapel grabbed.
Just think about how many times, guys, that you've been kneed in the balls by accident in jiu-jitsu. It happens, right? It's part of the sport. It's a combat sport. People know when it was intentional and when it wasn't intentional. You're not going to be the subject of some sort of smear campaign by Like, this is just some sort of weird, I mean, I hate to say it, but it kind of feels like some sort of like weird incel fantasy about how like the woman's going to sacrifice her reputation to ruin mine because it's woke or whatever. And it just, that doesn't happen. Like, just be a respectful person, right?
I'm gonna be a part of the Me Too movement and get canceled. I'm like, fucking shut up. Like, just shut the fuck up. Go sit over there. No, you know what you need to do? I've told a man this before. You need to go to the bathroom, look in the mirror, and say, do I deserve to be respected? And then come let me know what you come up with. I
It's a
know
fair
that's very
question.
aggressive, but
Oh my
I've
God,
been
I
known
love
to be
it.
brash a time or two.
Little bit, just a little,
Just a little.
just
Well, I
a
think it's
little.
good though, right? Because that's, I mean, again, a lot of the problem is that guys just don't understand. I certainly didn't for a long time until I started podcasting with more women and kind of seeing the type of crap that they have to deal with in the comments. And then I realized, oh, there is a whole level to this that I did not realize was part of the experience of being a woman in jiu-jitsu. And if this is the kind of shit that people are willing to post publicly with their name attached to it, I can only imagine what they're willing to say privately to women. So that was a real eye opener for me. And I think that just exposing people to this so they understand what, you know, that look, this stuff, people suffer and get hurt because of this. It's not a harmless thing to make these little comments, right? You're kind of creating a culture that will exclude women from the gym and make them feel unworthy. And that's the last thing we should want to do in a combat sport that we market, especially to women all the time.
There are also two questions that I myself have gotten. I genuinely don't even know how many times, and several of my female students have also brought to me to be like, a dude asked me. One is, men will say, can you choke me out with your thighs? Like, if my head's between your thighs, can you wrap me up and choke me, like make me pass out? And can you whoop my ass? You think you can beat me up? And I started just saying, I don't know, try to hit me. And usually they're so taken aback by that that it kills the conversation. But it's this, and that specifically was when the Marvel movies came out and Black Widow made her debut, and then everybody's rape fantasy wrestling a woman became a thing, which is fucking gross. And at our gym, another thing that I do think is another contributor to why we're able to have so many women is I aggressively push. You are a grown up and don't have to do anything you don't want to do. Full stop. No is a complete sentence. I've been saying that. Rob Bernanke says it. I didn't say he took it from me because I've been saying it forever. Because you don't fucking steal words from people. That's not real. Subtweet. Uh, and like I've even heard women, like I've gone to to seminars led by women where language is used like, you have to do this and you have to, and I'm like, no, the fuck you don't. You don't have to do anything. Like, there is a time and a place to push yourself outside of your comfort zone, but that is a conversation you're going to have with yourself, and you're going to do it because you want to do it, not because somebody else is trying to make you, which dances back into the whole trauma thing and knowing how to deal with people who have trauma. If you want to have a successful school, in my opinion, you should have some understanding on trauma processing and what that looks like, especially if you're running a school that has self-defense or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because those are two of the main things people are coming for.
Nice, nice. Well, I mean, thanks so much for this conversation, Shelby. Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about, which we didn't cover so far, or did we kind of get into everything?
I'm here for the ride, so you all just keep throwing questions at me, and I'll monologue about it.
Mike, Jesse, anything else that we want to talk about or that you want to ask?
You know, I guess, you know, something that, not that ownership has to be attributed to it, but, you know, for us, it has not been enough to just be a neutral space. And, you know, something that Shelby said earlier, I feel like not just women, but everybody needs to know that you're going to go to bat for them and that this place is safe. Mike, I think I was telling you while you were in town, you know, we've had people come to the gym when their date wasn't going well, right? Their first date didn't go well. They didn't go home. They didn't go They came to us to hang out and just watch classes and be and feel safe for the rest of the night. You know, and simple, it may not seem simple and little to other people, but, you know, there've been at least once, I think it's probably happened more than once, you know, where body parts start slipping out of clothes. You know, there's a wardrobe malfunction. And, you know, as a coach, as a leader, go help, go intervene before there's some sort of, you know, embarrassing event. And those little things pay huge dividends to helping people feel safe in those spaces. That is not just under the purview of women. It's our responsibility too, to make and help everybody feel safe. So, you know, my challenge to folks is, you know, we need to step up and do better.
I would say that something that has come up a lot in conversations I've had. People, you know, every guy that I've ever talked to who runs a jiu-jitsu gym, of course they want women to train at their gym. Usually they're desperate to get more women in the gym, because why wouldn't you want more customers, right? And often, you know, men
They're
think
worth
that,
more money.
well, and often men too, they think that, you know, this is an area where we could really actually help some people. And men will often be surprised that they don't have that many women training at their gym. And they'll wonder, well, what can I do to kind of make this place more open and welcoming? How come I only have like 2 women who train here? And one of the things that I've observed from talking to a lot of people in this space is a lot of the time it's not the big things, it's the little things. It's kind of the signals that your culture gives off about who's really welcome there or not. No guy will ever have this experience because of the demographics, but imagine if you're like a 20-year-old jacked jiu-jitsu athlete and you walk into a gym and everyone there is like a 60-year-old grandma, right? You're the only 20-year-old dude in the gym, and they're all talking about, I don't know, Severance or White Lotus or something, and you don't watch those shows, so you have no context. They're all having these like group conversations, and they're laughing, and they've made this little circle, and none of them look like you, and they're talking about stuff you don't understand, and you're just sitting there at the door, and it's your first week, and there's a signal there that, like, this is not a culture for me. It's not necessarily that it's malicious. It's just, I'm reading the room here. This is not a gym that caters to me, and I know that because there's no one else here like me. I would be the first, so maybe this isn't the place for me. And that's the experience that many women have when they walk into a gym, right? It's nothing but dudes. And so the question then becomes, what kind of subtle signals can a gym give to tell women that this is a place for them? Of course, one of the most subtle signals is you have a lot of women in the room, but that's kind of a chicken and egg thing. So I'd love to know your thoughts on how do you kind of get that culture going where women are going to want to train there so that they don't feel excluded and so that they feel like this is a place where they belong.
I mean, I think going back to what you said earlier about men not knowing how to be vulnerable and intimate because they were never taught, I think this lives under that same blanket. And just treat them like you would if they were a dude coming in. Talk to them just like you were talking to the dudes in the room. Just keep being normal. like I don't. It sounds so stupid, but it doesn't need to change because a female has entered. Like, you can keep doing the thing. Like,
So 2 days ago, we had a new prospective student come in. So a couple nights a week, Shelby teaches a yoga for grapplers class 30 minutes before the foundations class. I'm greeting this guy, getting him to sign the waiver, and as we're walking in, all I know is that there is somehow a conversation that is combining syphilis, AIDS, and lobsters.
Is this like a Jordan Peterson thing? Where are we going with this?
I don't know. But so, I mean, to her point, there was a chance that this dude was going to walk in with that same experience that you were just talking about. Like, this is not the place for me. But it was such a kind of a wide open and wild topic. He just sat down and immediately was able to sit down and enjoy the conversation and become part of it. I don't know, Shelby. It just, when we were talking about this, it made me think about that. And the only reason I bring it up is because it was Shelby that was talking about the lobsters and the AIDS and everything else.
Of
Can
course,
lobsters
it was.
get syphilis? I don't even know if that's possible.
No, they were two different conversations happening at once.
So the social scientist in me hears that, and I think genuineness seems to be part of the key, right? Like, is that what you're talking about? Is like just being genuine, like what you see is what you get, and we don't have to put on a facade for anybody. Like, we're always respectful and kind, and but you don't have to put on a facade. You have to treat people with kid gloves based
Right.
on
I myself personally, I deeply, deeply hate small talk, and I will do virtually anything to avoid it, including bringing up, okay, this is how it started.
Here we
I
go.
was like, I don't actually remember how it started, but we were talking about the process of it going from HIV to AIDS. I think it was because we were talking about human papillomavirus originally. I don't remember how it turned into lobsters, but I just pick random topics and I'm like, this is what we're going to talk about right now, and we'll just let it go. I think it originally stemmed from when Acid Josh and I were talking about dolphins having prehensile penises, which is an inappropriate conversation. However, there is no one being sexualized except for people and dolphins.
Dolphin. Poor
They
dolphin.
said poor dolphin.
It's not poor dolphins. Dolphins are awful. I love them, but they are so bad. They like.
So
we don't
should
need
I
to go
throw
into
away
it.
my
I'm
dolphin
never gonna.
centerfolds?
I'm never ever gonna get on this podcast ever again.
Okay, so we'll do a part 2 about dolphin penises.
I'm like,
That'll come up.
They have prehensile
Well,
penises.
So, Shelby, let me ask maybe a clarifying question that'll maybe get us closer. And I don't necessarily want to name names, but we've been in business owners meetings before where this topic has come up.
Yeah.
And the solutions are
penises?
always no.
We talk
Getting
about
women
dolphin
in the
dicks
gym.
all the
Okay,
time.
okay. I was gonna say,
love
I
dolphin
haven't been to
dick.
Kentucky. I don't know like what your social norms are, but maybe this is just the thing you
They're
guys
not
talk about
good.
all the time.
Yeah, they're not good at all. But, the things that, keep hair ties and tampons in the bathroom. And, the women will just magically appear. And
They're like,
just,
shit, you have tampons? I'm in.
My experience
I
has
can
been it's the
stick 'em
other way
everywhere.
around. Yeah, my experience has been the other way around, where it's like when a woman appears, then suddenly all of the bobby pins and the hair ties appear. Like on my desk here,
Oh,
I got
my
I got a
God.
wife and kids. I got a whole bunch of these little bobby pins
Uh-huh.
just sitting on my desk. I don't know where they come from. They just appear all the time.
That's because bobby pins are taking over the world.
That is true.
So we were actually sitting and this is one of the posts that I originally made on my Rough Hands OG page. We were sitting in a business owners meeting and they were specifically talking about how to get females in their gyms. And I, in the bluntness that I have displayed here in your all's abode, was like, don't let your male students try to fuck your female student. It's real simple math. And they were like, direct quote, well, adults are gonna adult. And I'm like, wow, that is very rapey. That's not the case. That is not the mentality. That's why you don't have women in your gym.
Yep. I don't think men understand exactly how prevalent and how toxic this can become, because it sounds to a guy like, well, why can't grown adult, freedoms and liberty, why can't grown adults date when they want to date? But I don't think guys, unless they've seen it happen to a female friend of theirs, understand that this isn't just a lot of the time. Like we're not talking about like boy meets girl and falls in love and gets married and happily ever after. There are people in the jiu-jitsu community, especially a lot of the instructors, who habitually use the female population of their gym as a dating pool. And it's really, really fucking disgusting, right? I mean, I always bring this example up when talking to people about jiu-jitsu. Like, would this fly in any other business? Right. I mean, if you worked in an accounting firm and like, I don't know, the head controller was like dating a new accountant every month, right? Just going through the employees like a Rolodex. That would not
And they're
fly.
running off your students.
Exactly.
And now you're losing money because you're
Well,
too fucking scared to tell your tool bag that wants to hit on everyone that's pretty to fucking knock it off.
yeah. It's a real problem.
To say, like, there can't be interaction and joking and playfulness, and there's even people who are naturally flirty. It's just the way that they are, but there is a line, and you need to establish that line and stick to that line. And there will be people that will push that line, and you reinforce it, and you tell them there is a time and a place, and
Saying
yeah, like I said, I fucking love an oil check joke. I don't love you slipping in my female student's DMs trying to get her to go to dinner with you. And then she's coming to me because you're making her uncomfortable. And now you get to talk to mommy about consent and don't shit where you eat. Now it sucks for everybody. But my female student feels safe and she knows that I have her back.
Awesome. Well, we're over an hour here, so I guess I should close this off. If people want to train at the friendliest gym in Louisville, Kentucky, Jesse and Shelby, where do they go to do that?
Yeah, come find us at Rough Hands BJJ on the socials and in person. Please come visit. We love visitors. You'll get to hear about lobsters, prehensile penises, maybe some sexually transmitted infections. You never know what's going to happen.
I'm telling you, man, syphilis does not get the respect that it deserves. That shit is scary.
It is scary. Well, you know what? I mean, unfortunately, I couldn't make it to your gym. People can't see because I got it out of the sling now for the purpose of this photo, but I just had shoulder surgery, so I couldn't make it down there for the camp. But Mike, do you want to provide a testimonial since you were just down training with Jesse and Shelby?
Make me sound amazing, Mike.
Oh, go ahead. What?
I said, make me sound amazing.
Oh, you are amazing. I don't need to make you sound that way. You just are. No, the camp was amazing. I mean, we had 60 people. Rough Hands is a great facility. This is the second time I visited. I mean, there were a bunch of old friends there that had attended previous camps, a bunch of new people who we never met who showed up. As of now, they've got 3 training floors. I mean, the culture at Rough Hands, I can't say enough about the welcoming, yet irreverent, yet respectful culture. I mean, those are probably the 3 best adjectives to describe it. Welcoming, respectful, and a little bit irreverent. And that's perfect for me. So, yeah, go to Rough Hands in Louisville, Kentucky. Why would you train anywhere else if you're within like 40 minutes?
Thanks, Mike.
True.
So roughhandsbjj.com, correct, Jesse? Shelby, is that the right domain? I believe so.
Yeah, roughhandsbjj.com.
Awesome. People check it out. And Mike, if people want to learn from you, where can they find you?
Old Bastard BJJ on Instagram and Threads, and you can find me at Magic BJJ in Lansing, Michigan.
Amazing. And me, if you want to find me on the internet, you can find me at BJJ Mental Models. That's at bjjmentalmodels.com, or just search for the name on social media. If you want to find me and train with me in person, you can't do that because I just had shoulder surgery. But give me about 6 to 8 months and then we'll talk. But anyway, fantastic conversation. Jesse, Shelby, Mike, thanks so much for doing this one. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. It was fun.
Thank you.
Have a great night, everybody.
Take
Good
care,
luck,
everyone.
friends.